How does an actor know that he or she is with the best agent willing to do more than just review the breakdowns and click submit to a casting call? How do you know?
You wouldn't be asking that.
Yeah, exactly.
You wouldn't be wondering, mommy. Trust me.
Kind of like when you're dating, you have to
I think that's a really good answer. I would agree.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome. I think people are still coming in, but I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction to what we're doing today and who we're here to talk to. My name is Lindsey Weissmueller. I am a casting director. Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's The Business Program. Now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our panelists for this afternoon. Irene Cabrera of Paradigm.
Hi.
Ivana Martinez of Verve.
Hi, everyone.
Pedro Tapia of CESD Talent. Natalie Moran of CAA, and Nigel Meiojas of UTA. Hello. So the best looking panel that SAG-AFTRA Foundation has ever hosted. Am I right? Thank you all for being here. I know everybody watching is going to appreciate your perspective as much as I do. And I think we can cover a lot of interesting things in the time we have available. So I'm just going to jump right into it. And I'd love to just start the discussion by asking each of you, maybe starting with you, Irene, what's your cultural, ethnic background? What brings you onto this Latino reps panel? And if you're comfortable answering, I'd love to know if your background affects your day-to-day job in any way, and if so, how?
Sure. Well, I am Boricua, 100%. I am from the lovely island of Puerto Rico. I was raised in Puerto Rico. I moved here to New York City when I was a teenager. Let me not age myself so much. Does my cultural background affect my day-to-day and or my work? Was that part of the question? Yes, it does. It affects every single thing that I do, to be honest with you. On a human level, on a professional level. It completely and totally dictates what I do and how I do it and who I do it with, for sure.
Thank you. And Ivana?
I am Mexican and Puerto Rican, really proud of that. I think when it comes to my culture, I am just reinforced that I'm working really hard, and we are all working really hard to show the young people, young boys and girls around the world that we deserve to be on screen. I think it was something a lot of us probably didn't have growing up. So I think that's at the core of why I do what I do.
Mm-hmm. Pedro?
Yeah, my parents are from Mexico, migrated up here right before I was born. So my older brother's from Mexico, and I was born in Los Angeles. So I think for me, the way it influences me, it's like they came up here, they do the work, give us a better opportunity, or give us an opportunity. And, that's just the way I approach it. Just do the work and, let the results speak for themselves. That's how I'm influenced.
Natalie?
My parents are from Mexico. My mom's from Colima and my dad's from Guadalajara. And I was raised here in LA and went back and forth to Mexico while I was growing up. I actually did 4th and 5th grade there and a couple summers. And I mean, it's impossible for it not to shape my work. It's sort of the way that I move through the world, and it's the lens that I see everything through. And it's something that I'm very proud of. It just living in Mexico and coming back to Santa Monica was such a culture shock, and it's just really shaped who I am. So absolutely.
And Nigel.
Thank you. I have an Argentinian father. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, which is one of the biggest melting pots of Latinos in the country. And certainly in terms of the culture and the art, it's something I've always been passionate about and just naturally over the years have kind of been gravitated towards representing Latinos, and it's great to see, we're making some improvements in representation on screen and behind the camera, and very honored to be with this group here today.
Well, thank you all for being here and your brief introductions, and we're going to get to know each of you a little bit more during this panel. So I'm going to hop around and address my questions to each of you specifically, just to avoid kind of everybody answering at the same time. But I would love to hear if one of these questions is, pressing on somebody, do feel free to jump in. And I will start with you, Ivana. My first question has to do with your client roster. Do you make a specific effort to sign Latino clients? If so, what kind of recruitment efforts have been particularly effective for discovering and bringing in more Latino talent?
I will say that I try to keep my finger on the pulse of, all the productions coming out of Mexico, South America, things like that, to see what talent's coming out of there and trying to see who is best to cross over into the US markets. It's completely different. I try really hard to do that and just be in the know and read as much as possible in that way. And when it comes to representation, I think at the end of the day, we really want to work with people who are special. And if they happen to have that commonality with me in terms of culture and understanding one another beyond, I respect your work, you respect my work, then that's the added bonus.
And maybe tacking on to that, Pedro, what does an actor need to do to be considered for your agency, Latino or not? But you could also do the first question if you choose.
Yeah, it's kind of subjective, right? Like, sometimes some of my business is based on emerging talent. And the truth is, they may not have a resume that other actors have that have been working for a long time. So, a part of it is a gut feeling. You meet them, you get to know them. Also, I want to get to know, where did you train? How are you training? How do you approach acting and all that? And just really have a conversation with them, right? And I think through that, you really get to know if the actor has what it takes. And that's what I base it on.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. So I kind of want to ask a question that I'm just generally curious about. I hope that this is interesting to everybody, because all of us here have been in the industry long enough to witness some pretty major shifts in the way of diversity of all kinds in film and television. More mainstream film and television feature diverse leads than ever before, including Latinos. And there's a focus on authenticity in casting, which I'll touch upon later. Irene, how do you think and maybe I feel like most of you might have some kind of answer to this, so I might ask a few of you, how do you think the diversity push in Hollywood has influenced our society more broadly?
I think a part of that question was also whether the shift was coming or being informed by society and or happening in Hollywood internally. I think there's an effort being made. I worry about a genuine commitment taking place.
What do you mean by that?
I think that there's a lot of conversation, which is great, because anytime that we're having difficulty with anything, right? If anything becomes questionable or problematic in any way, and or clearly people's opinions and feelings are involved, there's always a way to handle, not necessarily conflict, but be able to bring to the table and have a clear discussion about how things can be done differently, and I think that that's happening, and I think that people want that, right? They think that that's what's fair and what could bring equality, right? What could bring more diversity and or inclusion. But that takes a lot of work, And so while you can have a majority of people wanting that, we lack the people within these structures to actively not only commit to that, but to make that happen. So yes, it doesn't make me excited. Yes, absolutely. You know, I mean, I'm also a theater person. So, you know, it's like, you know, 4 seasons ago, you know, pre-COVID, we had, you know, an entire, you know, brown and black great way, right? And it was amazing. It was Shuffle Along and Hamilton and On Your Feet and all of these amazing productions happening for, you know, where there were mostly people of color and on the casts. So, you know, it's that, and then you see what's happening on television, and, you know, but then we can also look back at the last 3 Emmy seasons, and where I don't know where we are, but we're not there, right? We're not there. Other than Oscar Isaac this year, we were nowhere to be found. You know, there's a lot of really great content and a lot of amazing, brilliant storytellers and showrunners that, thank God, are working in occupying space and telling their stories. And then somehow along the way, we get lost in here. Somehow we keep getting shifted to the side. And that's what I want to constantly talk about, right? And it's figuring out how to create conversation where there's ultimately a solution to a problem. And it's, yes, the conversation is shifted into us being seen and being included, right? And then somehow along the way, it stops, you know? And so our work, especially if we're representing people of color and or more specifically Latinos, then it's a battle. It's a constant pull and push that needs to happen for us as their representatives.
Nigel,
I hope I answered your question.
Yes, yes, thank you. Nigel, are you generally, if you agree that, you know, things are moving in a certain direction, whether good or bad, from the time we started in the industry, are you generally encouraged by the direction that things are moving, or do you feel like Hollywood's not doing enough in that regard in terms of putting stories and leads and prioritizing having leading roles or meaty roles in film and television at the forefront?
Well, I think there's a couple ways to approach that. You know, I think from the glass half full approach, right, there is an initiative to tell these stories, right, to cast people of Latino descent into leading parts. So I do think it's the effort is there. Do I think that we're there yet? No. But I think the more that you see stories being told from a Latino perspective, and whether that's storytellers that come from different countries in Latin America, their point of view, the Latino American perspective is also very different. I do think it's going in the right direction. And I think I think the studios are seeing that commercially the success is there. These are amazing stories to tell and storytellers. And it goes beyond just trying to put someone into a part. It's who is making the decisions to hire the director, who's making the decisions to do the casting. It starts at the top. So I think that it's going in the right direction. And I think that, you know, I think the more and more that all of us are out there promoting our clients for every type of job, you know, whether that's, you know, a leading part, a supporting part, it's really thinking through that lens. But I think the most important thing is really about who's making those decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, in front of and behind the camera, I know there are, you know, there are pushes for incentives from SAG-AFTRA. In terms of in front of the camera, there are pushes just sort of like the Oscars sort of implemented some incentives to have diversity behind the camera as well. And so all these things, you know, do seem they're new. They're not things that existed when I started working a long time ago. And I'm just genuinely curious how you all feel about the momentum, and it feels like it's picking up. It feels like I haven't cast a film with, you know, without diversity in the lead cast in years. And I couldn't say that probably just even, 5 years ago, it just wasn't as much a part of the conversation. And how, moving to you, Natalie, how do you all feel some kind of responsibility as reps with, Latino heritage or from Latino countries, to push diversity where you can, to, put diverse clients on your roster, to, engage with story, scripts and productions that tell stories that are, interesting to everyone?
Yeah.
Do you feel a sense of responsibility at all?
I mean, yes, but I think I don't, how should I say this? It's more like I want to do it. Like, I don't feel like I have to do it. It's what I naturally gravitate towards. And I think about, like, if you think about, to your point, 5-10 years ago, no one was really going to, a male agent and being like, why do you only represent men? It was just, that's what they felt comfortable doing. And to me, like, I love working with women. I love working with Latin talent, like, and it's not out of any sense of like duty. It's more of the fact that that's the people that I respond to. And it's, it's a choice. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah. I mean, definitely. I think that makes a lot of sense. Does anyone else want to address this topic at all? Is this burning on anybody's heart?
I was just going to think, I think going back to the correlation between Latino content and commercial success is also something to look at. I think if you look at this year, the success of a film like Father of the Bride, of the remake, which was a big hit for the streamer, was an interesting case study, because in that movie, it was looking at the differences among Latinos, right? And between cultures, and kind of pointing out to the rest of the world the differences between a Cuban family and a Mexican family. But meanwhile, it's a story that anyone can relate to. So I think the more commercial success there is, the more opportunity that arises. And I think the more opportunities you're going to give to filmmakers and to actors. I think it was interesting. I was reading a statistic. The Los Angeles now, I believe, is almost 50% Latino. The U.S. is at almost 20% that identify as Latino. So the opportunities are there. It's just a matter of getting it to the screen.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that kind of leads me into another thing that I am actually very interested to talk to you all about. And then I promise I'll get to some more practical questions. I want to get a little philosophical for a second and ask about authenticity in casting. When you talk about, the differences between cultures, and from my perspective as a casting director, I have lived through a clear shift in the process where at one time there's a character who's meant to be Puerto Rican. It could be just like a person with brown hair. Just somebody who looked like they could be Puerto Rican. Example would be like Natalie Wood in the original West Side Story. And then it became that, okay, well, this actor should be Latino of some kind. And today, if I'm casting a Puerto Rican character, especially if her heritage is a part of the storyline, the societal expectation or demand is that a true and meaningful effort is made to cast a person of Puerto Rican heritage, and that is made a priority in the casting process. That's true of diversity on all levels of film and television. A character who uses a wheelchair, a real effort is made to cast an actor who uses a wheelchair in real life. Neurodivergent characters, any specific ethnicity, country of origin. I am curious, Irene, what are your thoughts on this trend? Does it help Latino actors? Does it hurt in some way?
Listen, I mean, I'm pro non-traditional casting, period. Also, so I'll take that. I'll take that. If I'll take that effort. I'll take that commitment from casting and the studio or the network. If that's ultimately what's going to at least, you know, create an open door, a room full of possibilities, you know, for people to be seen and considered to be able to tell those stories and live in those rooms. Absolutely.
Pedro, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate, you know, trying to find authenticity. And do I always have that? No, but I appreciate the effort, and it makes me want to find it, right? So it makes you want to go out, find, if we're talking about Puerto Rico, like Puerto Rican actors that I don't know about, you know, and reach out and make that effort, or in Mexico or any other place, right? So I think it's great, and I think it's going to introduce us to the next crop of talent, and I think that's important.
I think that's a really good point, because it may close the door for some working actors who don't, you know, aren't authentically Puerto Rican or whatever we're talking about, but it will open the door for people who haven't had that door open for them in the past, and it will create more talent it will create more talent in that category that just didn't, or, you know, it'll bring that talent to the forefront that we didn't see before. So it's an interesting dynamic. Ivana, do you have anything to add on this?
I think we're also still in the educational process a little bit, because I think, at least when I think of people having value or anything like that, it eventually just does succumb away from like, oh, I need someone who's Afro-Latino or Dominican, and into just Latina, and say we get sides and they're in Spanish and it's a totally different dialect than what like our actors are used to. That's something that I'm finding, you know, still to be something that I call casting about sometimes. Like, hey, like, you know, my girl is Cuban. Can she do it? Not necessarily word for word off the page, but in her dialect, so it sounds natural to what the character is trying to portray in this moment. You know, something of that nature. I think those situations still kind of happen, but it does open those avenues for all of it and that on top. But it's something that, even talking with executives and people around town, it's still an educational moment for all of us, because we're not a monolith. There's so much, you know, bubbling under the surface of what we're known for in our community. So I think we're still in that process in the industry.
Yeah, for sure. We're all
translating too. I mean, I don't know if you guys deal with this also, but, you know, when the materials come in, you know, and we're expected to, or the actors are expected to translate it into their native tongue.
Yeah, that there's actually
I'm like, okay, hold on, someone needs to get hired to do this.
Yeah, no, I there is a question about that, from the audience in the Google forum, that how would you recommend an actor advocate for themselves in those situations where they're being asked by casting to do something like translate sides, and, you know, that's not something that casting should typically be asking an actor to do. Has it happened? Have I done it in the past before? Potentially. I try not to anymore, but it's just something that's evolving, because you realize like that's work for the actor. They're already self-taping. They're already doing all these things to get their tape in 36 hours and, you know, doing all these sides. And so to add that layer of work to the process is a lot. And so how would you recommend actors advocate for themselves for things like translating sides, turning over a tape in, 0.5 days, like a half a day, doing sides that are 10 pages long and require translation, these things that are being asked of casting directors in the age of self-tapes. How do you guide your actors through that? Is that something that you handle for them? What about actors who don't have reps who are going to go to bat for them in that way?
Yeah, they have us, the actors that have reps, we handle that. I mean, I deal with that all the time. I've been dealing with that for years.
I think we all can agree that we all hate self-tapes.
Is that the general consensus?
It's interesting because I thought, look, obviously out of the pandemic, we got in a situation where people aren't doing in-person castings. I think the problem across the board is that you're giving an actor, here's 10 pages, and turn it in 36 hours or 12, or even worse, like 12 hours. It's without any kind of guidance or the opportunity to, sit with a casting director and have a conversation about it, or get some direction from a director or producer. So I do think unfortunately, a lot of that's lost. Now, on the flip side, it does put the control in the hands of the actor. So you have a little more opportunity to do it 5 times, 10 times and get it right. But I don't know. I think it's very tough these days as we're talking self-tapes. And I do feel for actors. They get that email and then all of a sudden they've got to digest and interpret, understand, and put a character together. So it's not easy. And I'm hoping that we're getting back to in person.
Yeah. But I also think it's important to have communication with your reps and just be comfortable to ask the question, hey, can you buy me an extra day or 2 days, or whatever the case may be, right? Because we don't know always that you might need that. And it's just, if you need that, ask for it. There might be times we're going to get an answer that is no. There might be times that we get the answer yes, but at least let us ask for you and advocate.
That's true. I think, from my perspective, I totally agree on that. 99% of the time, the answer is yes. Like, casting wants you to do a good job in your tape because our search will be over faster if you nail it. So shifting gears a little bit, I'd love to hear maybe from you, Natalie, first, if you have any Latino industry professionals that you think have been the most influential in pushing authentic Latino stories in front of audience in recent years, or did you have a mentor that influenced you to sort of put that as part of your thought process in hiring clients and taking on projects and sending projects to clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think that going back to sort of one of your original questions about we've seen change, I think it's about creating a healthy ecosystem. Like, I think it's everyone having to do a little bit. So it's the actors, it's the executives, it's producers, it's sort of a collective of people who are pushing for diversity in entertainment. And I can list a ton of executives that I love who are pushing for diversity. And I think it's very reassuring to me that I have this sort of class that I've grown up with of Latino executives throughout the industry that have become sort of our best cheerleaders, supporters, mentors. Like, we put people up for jobs. Like, I'm part of a lot of groups where, someone will post like a job search or like just, hey, I really need X, whatever it is. And I feel like that's something that has materialized, I think, in the last like 5 years, because definitely when I started, I didn't feel like I had that community. And it's just been really great to see people grow sort of and move up in the ranks and build this network. And, to get specific, I work a lot with Tracy Brennan and Christy Habegger also, who Tracy Brennan's an agent here at CAA, and a lot of people don't know that she's Latina. Her mom is Mexican, and because she just presents very white, and she's a phenomenal agent, and represents like Ana Darmas and Anya Taylor-Joy and Demian Bichir, and she's been doing it for a long time. And one thing that I love about working with her is that she is very inclusive. And for me coming up, anytime I would bring something for one of her clients, she'd put me on the phone with them immediately. And it was just, I think that this is, for me specifically, as a talent agent, this is something that you learn by doing. And I've really been fortunate to work with people who have let me sort of take a stab at it and who are there backing me up in case something goes wrong. And it's taken a long time to find those people, but they're certainly there, and it's a great community to be a part of right now.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned Christy Habegger, because she was definitely someone that when I initially read that question, I immediately thought about. I met Christy way back when she started Latina magazine and had J-Lo on the first cover. And it's been absolutely amazing to me to see the work that she has done, not only for the Latino community, for people of color, period, for artists of color. She's not a CIA anymore, right? She's at Warner Media now. But it's so cool that you get to participate in that, Natalie. I think that's awesome.
I was her assistant a long time ago.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
That's so fierce.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, true. Like, and also just like unrelenting. Like she just never stopped. It takes a lot of strength and power.
Yeah, but I also think that there's just a lot of young, hungry executives around town right now that are just really, again, amazing, and it's just really awesome to see.
Does anyone else want to give a shout out to anybody they think is a rock star pushing Latino storylines to the forefront, or a mentor that they've had that has been inspirational to you?
I mean, right now, I think I've been thinking about this a lot, but I'm really loving the work that Christian Chabonier is doing over at Chelsea. When you look at the cast of East New York, it's mostly, people like Ruben Santiago Hudson, Jimmy Smits, Elizabeth Rodriguez, the Pacho Paul Calderon in there, just this incredible old school theater first people too. It's just really amazing to me. And I feel like I can just picture him in there, just literally just pushing with every other casting director in there for all of their productions that they're working on. So I'm grateful for that. And I'm inspired by people that, that are agitators, people like Billy Porter, people, somebody like my client, Biko Ortiz, who's non-binary, Puerto Rican, plays Jim in Our Flag Means Death, that I'm attracted to that. I'm inspired by that. And it makes me hopeful in that way. The same way that Nigel was saying earlier about the cup being half full. That's the aspect of it that makes me hopeful, and it makes me want to do more and continue to, do what we do for our people.
Maybe I'll send this to you, Ivana. This is a question from the audience. Are there any specific networks or streamers, production companies that you have noticed are particularly open to or putting forth Latino storylines in an authentic way?
I was going to say earlier, actually, when we were talking about people in the industry in general, I just think the television space is taking a lot of risks with awesome, young, diverse voices. And some of these people are becoming staples in our industry. I think of Marvin Lemus. I think of Tanya Sriracha. I think of Gloria Calderon. All of those people are paving the way for us. And it's going up to like the top streamers or the top studios in our town. So pinpointing certain people, I just think it's coming out there. We're breaking through the noise already. I mean, there's places like Hooray under Issa. It started off from like her show and spun out from there. They're doing a lot of different stories that are celebrating different cultures.
New Rican, Ojalá. Yeah. That's a few.
Somebody also had a follow-up question to something that you said earlier that I wanted to ask. When you ask if, your client from Cuba, for example, can use their own dialect instead of the exact words on the page, what answer did you get? What answer do you normally get? Is it just, it's obviously case dependent, but is there typically flexibility?
Definitely flexibility. And I think for me, I always want actors to feel like they're putting their best work out in the universe. Like, do not feel rushed. Do not feel like you don't feel connected to this character anyway, because that's going to show up, especially on a self-tape. I think the pandemic really taught people that whatever you're feeling internally is going to show on this recording, whether we like it or not. And I think the onus is on us as representatives to be having a direct conversation with casting, with execs, with producers, whoever, and be like, I understand what you want. I understand what's on the page. I'm telling you from my perspective, I think this is the best result we're going to get is if she's able to do her own dialect, if we don't have to do word for word. And they're like, you know what, you're right. Not everyone is going to fulfill all these words and do it well. So let's try and get the best scene out of her. And luckily I got like the most amazing tape, but it's something that you can work around for sure, because maybe they wrote it in a certain way, and then once you have an amazing tape or brought to life a different type of vision and they see it as a more fitting, character or role, that might win the day. You never know. You got to take a risk on that.
I think that's really smart advice. And especially with self-tapes, actors need to really think about what they're putting out there and really make sure that you don't have that immediate feedback. So you want to kind of take ownership of the process in a different way. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about, is how can I reach this character in a way that's going to be the best version of it, because that's what everybody wants. That's what the actor wants. That's what the rep wants. That's what the casting director wants and beyond. And so I see so many self-tapes come in and it's just like somebody just like phoning it in because it's a self-tape and they're just going to do it before they go to dinner. And it's like, and I know it's so hard because certain actors are probably getting more self-tapes than they did auditions. Other actors maybe not, but it's not worth going on tape if you're going to phone it in. Just don't do it. Because they are really considered. Like, I would not request a self-tape if I wasn't meant to like watch it and consider and hope that somebody was going to do a good job. We're getting a lot of questions about language. How important is fluency, dialect for roles? I think, this is just sort of like tagging on to what we're talking about. How important, are you finding it for Latino actors who have accents to try and get rid of them, or to, try and perfect accents for countries that they're not from? I know these are a lot of questions into one little moment. Pedro, do you have anything you might add about that?
Yeah, about accents. It depends on what market, right? Like, if you're going to be working on network television, as an example, it might be best to have like a neutral American accent, but, some television nowadays is global too. So, it's give and take. But the same thing we tell like our Australian clients, work on that American accent. It just depends on what we're working on, really. And I think nowadays there's just so much rich content. There's going to be things for you, something to strive for, I guess.
I like accents. I'm never trying to get rid of an accent. I'm just trying to make sure that regardless of what the client is saying, that, you're understood.
What I would add to that, though, because I do think that we are obviously in a place where like people are more used to listening to accents on TV. I think before there was you were sort of told to get rid of it. I will say though that to keep in mind, like, it will limit certain roles given what the role is, right? So like if you're supposed to play a native like Angelino and you have an accent from Mexico or whatever that is, like that accent's actually going to affect the storyline, because your character, if they grew up in Los Angeles, should be able to speak with a certain accent or lack thereof or whatever that is. I also think that people like, we talked about Oscar Isaac earlier, and that's sort of for a lot of people, sort of this ideal career where he hasn't been defined by ethnicity. He's been allowed to play so many different characters. And part of it too is he has an accent that doesn't place him anywhere. And so I think as much as we want to be in a world where, accents don't matter, I think it does affect the roles that you can take. Not all of them, but I do think that there's obviously some authenticity that the character needs to have, and just to be mindful of that.
Mm-hmm. He's brilliant at Shakespeare too. That's the other thing that's really amazing about it. When you hear him, when you watch him perform live, it's incredible. Just gone. You literally just don't hear it,
So shifting gears just a little bit, Nigel, what is a day in the life of an agent like? I know every day is different. Everybody has different challenges. Walk us through like a typical day, like, wake up, get your morning coffee. Like, what are some things that might come up for you during the day that the audience might not know about?
I mean, I think as an agent, I think first and foremost, you've got to be a sponge, right? You're reading scripts, you're reading the newspaper, you're reading magazines, you're watching new series, you're watching movies. Like there's not enough hours in the day. You could do it endlessly. And that's the kind of the best part about the job, and I think as we look at the globalization of media and how content is coming from everywhere, I mean, I'm watching formats that are coming out of Mexico, out of Spain, Korea. I mean, it's from anywhere in the world nowadays. So as far as like what the day looks like, I mean, that's a huge part of it. And then obviously the other part of it is advocating for your clients, finding opportunities, creating opportunities. I think what was just going back to like we're talking about like accents or where someone's from, I think it's also incumbent upon the agents to turn, to change the idea of what the role maybe is with casting and with the producers, right? Like there's a lot of times when you can suggest someone that maybe wouldn't have been thought of initially, but with intelligent suggestion and being creative, you can make it fit. And that's, I think, how we all, can change the trajectory of opportunity. So so as far as the day, it's advocating, it's pushing your clients. It's a ton of emails, too many emails, text messages, a tremendous amount of WhatsApps now. I found like since the pandemic, email is probably like number 3 in terms of level of communication. I'd say phone calls are number 4, and it's text messages and WhatsApp all day. Mm-hmm. And, in a lot of ways, it's great because it's quick, it's fast. And, but at the same time, it's also, the day never really ends. Mm-hmm. So I think a good agent's always accessible, and always coming up with good ideas.
Yeah.
That is
I don't think we have like a schedule, do we? Do we have like a schedule? I don't know if we have schedules. I don't think we do. I mean, I'm working every day, like especially since the pandemic. I think we're definitely living at work, right? We're living at work. And I feel like everything is just like it's all mixed in together. You know what I mean? Like as soon as I wake up every day, I'm thinking about Josh shooting, in Berlin and what that time is. So I'm looking at the clock and saying like, where could he be right now? Figuring that out, talking to the rest of the team so we can get him ready for his next gig. So yeah, it's just this constant, it just doesn't stop. It's a good thing though.
Ivana, life before the pandemic, life now as an agent, which one do you like better? If you had to choose one, would you go back to the way things were before? Would you go back to the workflow and structure? Would you stay with the workflow and structure that we have now?
For me personally, I really need the stimulus of other people. So I really love being in the office every single day, 5 days a week. I really enjoyed that because I love something magical can happen when you're able to walk into your colleague's office or you're passing like the halls with someone and you hear something's happening, hearing how you can jump in. Like to Nigel's point, I feel like every day I'm putting different puzzle pieces together. Like, yes, of course, with actors, we go through casting and casting execs and all that stuff, but it's talking to producers, directors, writers, creatives, all these different ways and all these different avenues to really create a different opportunity for our clients, especially in the day and age of what else can I be doing? I mean, heck, there's people on TikTok now. There's all these different avenues that did not exist before the pandemic, you know what I mean? And there's other like avenues to make more money and to, at the end of the day, it's for their livelihood. So just finding new opportunities that way. So I've really enjoyed being back in my office, not in it right now, but I love going there every single day and talking with my colleagues because, it's better to have people that support you in that way.
I don't have that. I literally I have coworkers that I've yet to meet in person because I've only been at Paradigm for a year. So I have literally, I share clients with people that I've never met in person.
Just sort of like this is so general, but just each of you, I'd like each of you to answer if you had to guess in terms of your talent, the talent that you have that would go in on auditions regularly before the pandemic. How do you sense that the landscape for talent that auditions for roles and that's how they book their work. Is it better for talent right now, or is it worse? The self-tape.
It's definitely tough because I think when you were in the room, you could show your personality, and that's, you know, that's half the part of booking a job is, do I want to work with you? Do I want to hire you as a professional working actor? Yeah. I think that's how it was when it used to be in person again. Mm-hmm. And so with self-tapes, it's so tough, but you need to show your personality a little bit. It's the same with like sides. You need to show your interpretation of the character. It may not be as written. It may not be the solution to what casting is looking for in particular, but it's something that you need to be proud of at the end of the day and put your best work out there. And hopefully the universe receives it and it comes back to you. It's really tough because some people love to tape because you have multiple takes, you have multiple tries, you have more editing at the end of the day, but it can also spin you out if you're just doing take after take after take and sitting with it almost too much. I don't know. It's really tough.
Yeah, I've heard it both ways. I've had actors who have panic attacks going into the room and auditioning. And now that they're self-taping, they're thriving, right? They're booking and they're doing really well. So I don't know if there's a perfect answer, right? But, you know, I think it should start with the opportunity and we take it from there.
I think it depends on the actor. Because, I mean, I have clients that, you know, it's the second the casting director or the exec or producer meets them, that's it, you know? And others that do just incredibly well with taping, and they give you 2 or 3 options, and casting goes, I love all of them, and you're like, okay.
Isn't that the best?
Yeah. Love that.
In a lot of ways, it's gotten harder. I think that, you know, a lot of the roles that before maybe would have gone through the audition process, I think go straight offer now to people with a profile. I think that there's obviously those opportunities that come up where you can get it, you know, through a tape or going through an audition. But I think most importantly, you know, there's something about the human heat, you know, connection of going in the room and getting a vibe and having someone really, you know, see you, hear you in person rather than just watching a tape. I think that's important. So I don't know. I mean, I think in a lack of maybe in-office auditions, I do think, you know, as a representative, making those introductions to key casting directors is something important, and to producers, and, you know, really making it a more macro introduction so that when opportunities do arise, you already have a connection.
I totally agree. And just taking it a step further, I think that with the pandemic and sort of the self-tapes and all of that, I think it's gotten harder to break people in the sense that, you know, we're not having traditional like premieres or events, you know, they're starting to come back, but like all of those things matter. You know, getting FaceTime with people or having a platform where, you know, you're on the red carpet or whatever it is. Like, I think that people who are starting out have unfortunately missed out on those experiences that are, you know, really important when you're coming up.
I feel like that all of that, especially everything that we've talking about, it's boils down to community. You know, like we're missing that. We need that. We want that. So it affects all of us in different ways for sure. But definitely in the industry, in the sense that that's ultimately what we're trying to do. You know, is to be part of a community.
That is a really, really good point. The Hollywood community, the Latino Hollywood community, all of these things are really important, and they have been missing for sure. I think
what Nigel was saying about that heat. You know what I mean? That's what that is. You know what I'm saying?
One of my dear friends who's Puerto Rican gave me the expression, so I'll give him full credit.
Calorcito.
Do you all? I'll ask Natalie this question. Do you feel like you see a trend in the workplace, kind of what we talked about on screen? Is there a shift to be more inclusive in the hiring and training consideration of Latino candidates at your agencies, or diversity of all kinds?
Yeah, I mean, I think CIA specifically has been just really pushing for Latino just executives and people to come into the agency. And I think that starts with your recruiting. And I think also just sort of pulling the curtain a little bit, because I think traditionally, I guess people didn't really know how to get into CAA or what it was about. And, anytime that there's any type of event, I definitely make it a point to be there to make sure that people see that there is a place for them, and any panel like this, anything like that. So I do think that there's more of an effort to make sure people know that we're here and that, that it's a place where people can come and thrive.
There's an effort, I think. There's an effort. I think that's how I'm there now.
Because I'm very proud of the efforts, UTA as an agency is making across the board in terms of inclusion and the hiring practices, who are representing, and it's been a massive priority, and it continues to be, and I'm very happy to be part of it.
I think, you guys also hired Patrick Harold, who is a huge champion for diversity and inclusion in the community, especially here in New York, especially in the theater community. I think that's wonderful. So congrats to you guys for that. It's a good friend of mine. And I think he's brilliant, but that's a huge win for you guys.
Yeah. Sure. I could say that it's the same priority for us at CESD, and we're always going to look for another agent, and that's something we're looking for. It gives us a different perspective on the talent we're going to bring in. So that's one area where you have to start. So
yeah, representation does matter, Lindsey. It does. Yeah. That's the bottom line.
It does.
Really does matter.
Yeah, no, it does. And I asked that question because mostly because I see it from my perspective, and I find it to be really encouraging. And I just wonder how it feels internally, if it feels like that momentum that I see from the outside in. It really feels like a genuine push to be more inclusive in the hiring at agencies. I think that is just as important as having people behind the camera and having the writers, having scripts that tell stories with, storylines that represent different communities. I'm just going to try and hit up a couple more questions from the audience here to get as many in as possible. How does an actor know that he or she is with the best agent, willing to do, more than just review the breakdowns and click submit to a casting call? How do you know that your agent is doing a good job for you, is into you? You've
got 5 agents that are all going to tell you they're the best.
You wouldn't be asking that.
Yeah, exactly.
You wouldn't be wondering, mommy. Trust me.
Kind of like when you're dating, you have to
I think that's a really good answer. I would agree that you don't need to wonder.
I mean, listen, I think about, but when I'm looking at my roster, it's amazing. I can see them, and I can see them even in a grid. I can see them when I wake up all day. I think about them.
I think just to if you're having that concern, I think it's important to think about specifically why you feel that way. Like, do you feel that maybe you're not getting enough opportunities, or do you feel that you're sort of sending yourself tapes and they're going into, the ether and nothing's coming back? Because I do think that part of being, having an agent is building a relationship, and it goes both ways, right? So you need to be able to articulate those things as well and say hey, you know what, I actually, I need a lot of feedback. So let me know, those are things that you can be worked on. So just to say maybe it's not a good match, but maybe, it's worth having that conversation, because I guarantee you your agent will want to know if you're feeling sort of a little out of the loop or maybe not as cared for.
Yeah. And you should be excited. You should be mutually excited about each other. Honestly, it should feel like a genuine collaboration. Right.
I agree.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
I tell my advice for actors asking how to get an agent is usually you can't. I think an agent needs to be the one who is interested in you first. I think that is how the best relationships begin, because then you have an agent who sees in you something that they feel they can present to the world in a way that is exciting and inspiring to them. And it it doesn't go that way if you're like hounding somebody and trying to pressure somebody or having a favor meeting or something like that. An agent has to genuinely feel excited about you for their own reasons in order to represent you properly. That's how I feel about my work. I have to feel that way about a script that I decide to say yes to. I have to feel like I can present this in a way that is to you all, that is I think is genuinely exciting and inspiring. Otherwise, you all are going to not listen to what I have to say. And so,
it's completely subjective.
Genuine, creating a sense of possibility, right? The second that we see these people, you know, there's something that sparks and says, I want that. I want to facilitate that storytelling. I want to engage in that process. I want to be part of making this possible.
Yes.
However that is.
It's a relationship, right? It grows and you have to have trust. And I think most of all, you have to have a point of view. You have to know, have an opinion about material, tell, why something's good or why something's bad. And that comes with time and really nurturing that relationship. But, I think that's where you see the biggest success stories and in the agent actor relationship is when you're able to have those conversations. And, it's not always easy, nor is it all, it's good times and there's bad times. And you have to have a relationship that's, I think, honest, and you have to respect the opinion, even if you may disagree, of both your client and of the agent.
Yeah. I like to tell actors, like, you're the architect of your career and we're here to help you build something. Now, if you're not getting the results you want, you'll be able to tell, right? So, trust the process. To Nigel's point, like, it takes time sometimes to get the results you want. But if you're getting the right opportunity, if you're having some dialogue or communication, it should feel good, right? It should feel like you're a part of the process.
Yeah. You should always have like honesty with your client, and you can be challenged with the opinions and things like that, but you should never be afraid to call your rep.
No, definitely not. Oh, God,
I was just about to say that if you feel that way about your rep, if you feel like you have to tiptoe around somebody, it's not working. And you need to either address it or figure something else out, because that's not a healthy agent-client relationship if you don't feel like you could be honest with your rep or vice versa.
Yeah.
Just to sort of wrap it up, because we are about there. Do any of you, I'm not sure who exactly is in the audience, but I have to imagine there are a lot of actors in the audience who are hustling, self-taping, some probably trying to get representation and don't have it yet. Do you have any advice that you like to give actors as a talent rep from your own perspective, whether it's something super specific and random or it's just some broad thing that you like to tell actors? I think we can close with that if each of you, have anything you'd like to add in that regard. Irene?
Sure. Stay true to yourself. Continue working on your craft. Study other actors. Watch things that you don't like. Go to theater. Have friends that are in this industry, for sure. But I think ultimately, as actors, it's important that they make a real, genuine, clear assessment as to not only who they are as human beings, but as storytellers, and figure out what it is that they want to do, how they want to do it, the kind of stories that they want to tell, and figure out who it is that they can do that with and how to get into those rooms, right? So we know that ultimately you can look at an entire season of television. What are you attracted to? Who are those showrunners? Who's casting those shows? Making an assessment of what that is and what you want your career to look like, instead of, just aiming to be seen and or get in front of just anyone. I think it's important to make a clear assessment and be targeted and intentional with what you're doing when you don't have rep.
I think
I would say just study the history, it's the hours, it's learning the craft, it's watching everything, knowing the business. But I think much to, what we were just talking about, it's learning what you're honing your own taste and your strengths take as many classes as you can, talk to as many people as you can. Thankfully, we're back a lot more in person of meeting people, building out your network, I think is critical. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I think most importantly is just putting in the time and learning the craft.
Yeah.
I think in addition to like building your talent and like flexing those muscles and building your arsenal, I think a lot of it is finding your tribe and your support group and finding the right creative community for yourself that's going to support you and build you up. I think this town, this industry in general, you guys are in the most vulnerable positions because you're putting yourself out there to be hired to the world essentially. And we have so much respect for that. And to find the people that support you in doing that is really imperative. And I think doing the work to make sure that you feel secure in yourself as a human being is also really important, and it's going to show.
I think, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and just try not to get burnt out with the process, because you're going to have a lot of auditions over the course of however long you're working or in this biz. So, try to at least enjoy it, but train, prepare for that moment, for that yes. I think that's important.
What I would say too is, as your career moves along, something that I've heard other agents that I really respect say is, your career is defined by the no's just as much as the yeses. And I think, as your career goes and grows, yes, you want to be very selective. But I think when you're starting out, I think there's a lot of value in trying everything. And obviously, going back to your point, within limits, right? Like with staying true to yourself. But I say that because, even if you're auditioning and you don't get the part, like that's still a casting director that gets to see your work. And it is a very small industry at the end of the day. And I've signed people off of casting directors tipping me off, right? They're like, this person didn't get the job, but I thought they were amazing. And then, you should take a look at them. So think of all of that as an opportunity to get your work seen. Getting the part isn't all that there is to get out of a casting, session or a self-tape or whatever that is. And I think that, you're also, while you're doing that, you're working on your craft. And I just, I definitely feel for all the work and the heartache and having, to get rejected. And, we're on the other end, right? When we have to call and tell people that they didn't get something. But I just want to encourage people to really lean in and try as much as they can, right now when they can.
I know it's true, Natalie. We feel it too, right?
Oh, yeah.
We do.
Me too, guys. Me too. I want to give my little piece of advice to actors to think less about what the world wants of you and think more about what you have to offer uniquely that is yours and what you want to say, because you are the only one who can offer that to the world. And that is where I see new emerging talent coming from, is a place of confidence in what they have to offer and what they have to say in a role and their take on a character, rather than, trying to figure out what I'm looking for, what the producer's looking for, what the director's looking for, which sometimes is like potentially broad and not as defined as you might think all the time. So focus on you and your craft, what you have to say, what you have uniquely to bring to the table. And that will be the strongest footing that you have to move forward. That is in your power when so much else isn't. I want to thank everybody for being here, the audience, the panelists. Thank you for your insights. It was wonderful. I hope we get to do it again sometime. And
I know, me too. I feel like I'm going to see everybody. I feel like I have to go to LA and meet you guys,
Yeah.
I don't know. Natalie, are you here? Are you in New York? Are you in LA?
No, I'm in LA.
Are you? And you, Pedro?
Yeah, I'm in LA too.
Oh, see, I'm the only one over here, so I'm by myself. But I was so excited when I got the invite, honestly. Yeah. The first thing that I said to Lindsey too was, I wanted to see people that look like me. So this is really exciting, I'm so happy that I got to meet all of you, honestly.
Likewise.
And it's like our own little tribe.
That's really wonderful. I'm sure it's encouraging to everybody watching to hear your insights and see everybody here doing good work. And we're so grateful to everybody for being here. Hope everybody has a good afternoon. And I think this is going to be posted on the YouTube channel. So feel free to share with your friends or watch it again and again if you want. And hopefully there'll be more things like this in the future. So,
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you,
It's
Zach.
amazing. Thank
Bye,
you.
man.